They flick the switch on the infrastructure. They flick the switch on our power or anything. We're sitting ducks here. We are, again, like
Yeah.
the climate is not friendly here. The climate is not it's not a tourist destination to come and get some sun. The climate here is very rugged and wild and barren and very, like where I live, I'm surrounded by mountains. I got fresh water. It's good in a doomsday apocalypse that I'm not in the city. It's good that I'm in a
Yeah.
small cul-de-sac and I know everyone around me. It's kind of good, that I've built those relationships over time, but it's rough, and it's rough. It wouldn't take much for moose and caribou and deer if the infrastructure goes down, the lights go down, and cars stop running, and people can't get gas for their cars, and everything starts to, kind of shut down. You'll start to see,
Yeah.
running water stops running. It'll get really bleak and dark here. It's not like we're somewhere off of South Beach where you could just leave the screen door and sliding door open of your apartment all year round and let the fresh air come in, and you know what I mean, and the sun would come in and disinfect and bring in that natural, we don't have that in Canada, unfortunately.
That's not large parts of it. No, I mean where you live and where I live, summers get awful hot here. It can kind of serve that purpose, but it's very seasonal. And in the wintertime, yeah, you're buttoned up. You're living with stale air and whatever else just because of how it is here, right, Deborah? It's called slave labor. Essentially, yes, it is. It is slave labor because these people come here and they don't have they can't afford to live here, but they can't get home, so they have to stay here and take what they can get. You've got people living 10 or 12 to an apartment.
Hmm.
Basically, you think of those dormitories that people lived in during the Industrial Revolution. That's kind of what we have here, and it's ridiculous. And I think that we're going to have a lot of unrest. And a lot of the unrest isn't even necessarily going to come from people like us, Mike. It's going to come from people who came here within the last 40, 50 years
Hmm.
and are kind of stuck here and demand a better deal, right? I mean, sometimes I don't, I'm not a socialist at heart, but, the labor movements, the movements that arose 100 years ago, when you see how people were living at that time, it's perfectly understandable. And I think I probably would have supported them too. Because, I mean, the average person just they were not getting a share of that productivity. They weren't getting a share of the boom.
Hmm.
Maybe their lives were getting somewhat better because the unit price of anything you needed to buy, mechanization reduced that unit cost so that you could at least survive. But it was a pretty hard scrabble life with long hours and dangerous working conditions, and knowing that you had this caste system that was emerging. That wasn't just the aristocracy, but it was the nouveau riche aristocracy that made a living of exploiting their workers.
Hmm.
And the people that were helping them do it were interchangeable cogs. In some ways, that's what they're trying to do now with all this diversity talk. They don't actually want diversity. They they don't care about a person's color or place of origin, but they all have to think the same.
Hmm.
They have to have the same ideology. Otherwise, they're unacceptable. They're that unacceptable fringe minority that our beloved prime minister talks about all the time. Yeah, coffin apartments for $2,000. Yeah, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I mean, the Russians, the communist bloc. I mean, when they built those cookie cutter apartment buildings all over Russia and Eastern Europe, well, people don't understand that for a lot of people, that was a major step up. They lived in little hard scrabble huts and cabins and had to farm their own food. And now they're in a place with central heating and hot, cold running water and public transport. And, they planned cities with schools and offices, close to the places of work. I mean, they
That
planned their
was
communities.
Chinese
They were
ghost
pretty
cities.
cookie cutter, but they were still a step up from what there was.
Chinese ghost cities were the same thing. They built these
Yeah,
ghost cities
Chinese.
all over China, and they were actually advertising. I was watching a video I made back in 2014 where I was talking about these ghost cities. They were advertising them as a massive opportunity for Chinese retiring people retiring to these communities, and to this day they're still abandoned. No one's retiring to those communities. Uh, from
Yeah.
2014 till 2023, late 2023, no one's moved into those communities. They're still abandoned.
I think they will, though, because you got that enormous retired population in China, or people, older workers, right, because of their own demographic problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you'll have, and I think you'll find the same thing here, Mike, is you're going to find the state is being expected to look after these retirees, and they simply won't have the funds. So what you're going to have, I think, is you're going to have a lot of these abandoned condo towers, but you're also going to have a lot of this abandoned commercial real estate, dead shopping malls and things like that. You think about it, they're level entry. They have escalators and elevators. They're conveniently located, where public transport and all that. And I think that what they're just going to do is they're going to turn them into housing developments for seniors.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of them, that's what they're going to wind up being. Because if you look at your average Walmart, it has a clinic. There's usually an eye doctor, something there. You have a pharmacy. You got lots of room for somebody to get around in on a scooter without having to go outside. But if they want to go outside, a shuttle bus, will take them downtown. Every town over 10,000 people in Canada has a shuttle bus going back and forth from retirement homes to take people to, take them out so they can go out to eat and or go shopping or whatever. I think that's what we're going to find going forward is we have to warehouse a lot of people. And we'll make it as comfortable as possible, but it's going to have to be efficient.
Well, I was
So
looking into something a few years back where they were looking at converting these empty malls into living centers for seniors.
Yeah. I mean, that would make sense. The retail apocalypse is upon us. It was delayed somewhat by Charlie 19 and all that nonsense. But you've reached the point now where governments, just the amount of money they're going to have to spend on servicing their debts going forward, however long it lasts. They've got to do something with all these retirees, and I think that it would be a lot more cost effective for them to just take these dead shopping malls and use them for exactly that. They're centrally heated and climate controlled. They've got multiple floors. They're safe. They're easy to guard.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of parking for family and, ambulances and things like that.
You could pitch a tent in the parking lot.
There.
You could pitch a big medical tent in the parking lot. Wink, wink.
Well, you would, yeah. Well,
I'm being sarcastic here.
Have to do that. Well, yeah, a lot of them have full. I realize, but they have full hookup for RVs. Yeah. You've got transients. They'd have a place to hook up and dump their tanks and fill up their fresh water and carry on too.